So I took a study trip to Egypt in November. I wanted to start this talk by telling my motivation and a little bit about my history with Egypt. So in 2009, I went on a Mathematical Association of America study trip to Egypt. It was during my second sabbatical. Thanks to PSU for providing some sabbatical support so that we could learn new things and travel. So I was retraining to teach history and mathematics because Dr. McGrath was retiring. And I got hooked on going on study trips. So there was not an MAA study trip in 2010, but there was one in 2011, and it was in Italy, and one of the first places we visited was Turin, and they have a spectacular Egyptian museum there. And so I started just so intrigued with Egyptian mathematics, the history of Egypt, and wanting to learn more. I've been on at least one study trip per year ever since then, and visiting Egyptian displays as much as I could, like at the British Museum, at the Louvre. And in spring of 2015, Dean Childers and I published an article about Napoleon Bonaparte and his visit to Egypt. And then I'm studying and studying, reading and reading. So I brought a lot of my books. And when you look at these books, and even ones that are talking about mathematics, so this is a really great book by a student of a man, professor that was at the University of Paris, that specialized in Egyptian hieroglyphs. It was on an MAA trip. But you look at here, and there's not pictures of actual hieroglyphs. It's all drawings. And so I thought, well, teaching history of math and talking about Egyptian mathematics, students would probably want to see actual pictures. So I started collecting. It took me over a decade working, but I finally got this paper finished on ancient Egyptian mathematical photo album. So it's published by Convergence. And as I'm doing all this studying, I realized there's so much more I don't know, so much more I want to learn, and start hearing about the Grand Egyptian Museum going to be opening in Cairo. It's like, I've got to go back to Egypt sometime. So that was on my bucket list. So I really, really wanted to go back to Egypt. I knew there were pictures I missed the first time. And then this Facebook post appeared by my friend Dr. Maria Zach, who is a historian of mathematics. She's also the Associate Dean at Point for Science and Technology and Engineering at Point Loma Nazarene College in California. And so she said, well, I want to take a group of 8 people on this mission vision trip to Egypt. I've got a few seats left, let me know. And my friend Pat Allaire, who is also a historian of mathematics, had been on it a few years ago, and I'd seen her Facebook post. It's like, sign me up, I want to go. And I got accepted to go. So my talk, I'm going to talk about this hunt for finding the hieroglyphs that connect with mathematics. But I'm going to go by each day of our trip. So I'm also going to be telling you some about our trip. So this time, this doesn't usually happen on the study trips I've been on, but we all met in London and flew together as a group into Cairo. And that way the company, which you're going to travel to Egypt, I highly recommend using this company. They had our visas all ready for us. They met us, took care of our baggage and everything. It was wonderful. So we arrived as a group. On the left is Dr. Maria Zach, our leader. So Associate Dean of Science, Technology, and Engineering and Mathematics at Point Loma Nazarene University. In the center are Deb and Mark, who go to the same church as Maria. And so this trip was partially mission trip, partially vision trip, including culture. And then I had the secret agenda of looking for Egyptian numerals. So they go to the same church as Maria. Then in the back here we have Wolfgang and Michelle. They used to go to the same church as Maria, but they have moved to San Francisco. And Wolfgang works for Google. Couldn't say what he does, but he works for Google. They were interested in mathematics as well. And then on the right here is Professor Dan Curtin, retired from Eastern Kentucky, very well-known historian of mathematics, and his wife Ellen. And I had traveled with them before on an MAA study trip to Guatemala. So our first day, we walked around Cairo, downtown Cairo, where our hotel was, and we took a beluga ride. You can see I'm smiling, I'm really happy to be in Egypt. And that evening, we attended a Catholic Mass that was in English at Zamalek, which is a neighborhood kind of on an island in the middle of the Nile in Cairo. So as I mentioned, this trip was kind of a joint mission vision trip. So there was a mix of some Christianity and current Egypt along with the history of ancient Egypt. Day 2. So we traveled around in a Mercedes van, which was very, very nice. And we passed this impressive medieval aqueduct on our bus ride to Garbage City. So this is where the Zabaline live. These are Coptic Christians who go down into town, collect the trash, and then they take it back and sort it and recycle it. And so that you don't have different companies coming and picking up your trash. It's these Coptic Christians come and pick up your trash. This area, they really have a nice system, recycle about 85% of what they collect, and they also have pigs to feed the organic waste to. And the people seemed happy, content, clean, and we were by a little grocery store, some kids getting a ride in a carriage. So they have resilience, it's really strong community ties, a lot of artwork. There were a lot of banners that had this man on them. So this is Father Salmon. He was founder of the St. Simon the Tanner Monastery in 1975 to minister to the people of Garbage City. And he passed away in 2003, and the area is still just filled with banners in his honor. So there's a lot of cool stories, and I can't tell everything. But supposedly this mountain, St. Simon the Tanner prayed, and this mountain actually moved. And, the verse in the Bible about if you have faith of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. And so that's where they decided to build these churches. There's 7, I think I'm right, or 6. 6 different churches carved into the mountain. This one on the left was dynamited out and will seat 20,000 people. And then there's a different one on the right. After visiting Garbage City, we went and visited Sat 7. So I've got a piece of papyrus up here that talks about all the places where Sat 7 is. It is a Christian satellite television network that broadcasts in Arabic, Persian, and Turkish across 25 countries in the Middle East and North Africa, along with about 50 countries in Europe. So it was founded in 1995 as a nonprofit organization with support from Middle Eastern churches. So they fed us some nice snacks. I like the little bird nest thing on there in the upper right, or upper left, sorry. They have a mobile van. We saw some of their studios. There's an outside studio. And I thought this was really interesting. They were dubbing, so they would get material that's in English, and there was an actor in inside with a mic and they're dubbing over in Arabic to broadcast it. And then that evening, I tried to engage everybody in the trip in my hunt. So I gave a lecture in the hotel lobby, which was interesting, but on Egyptian hieroglyphic numerals so that I could prepare everybody else to be on the lookout to help me find these Egyptian numerals. So here's a picture from my first trip that to Egypt that just actually made that trip for me because it has pretty much not quite all 7 numerical hieroglyphs on here. So the numeration system from ancient Egypt is base 10. It's an additive system like Roman numerals. And like many cultures, there is a stroke for a 1. And so for years I thought this had a 1 here. And now as I've been reading more and learning more about Egyptian hieroglyphs, the red towards the faces and then top to bottom. So this stroke is under a heart, so it is not a 1. It is a determinative saying that this is talking about something related to the heart, so possibly numbering years. But we do have the hobble for 10, and since there are 3 of them, that's representing 30. You guys can answer. Coil of rope is 100, so we got 3 of those. The lotus flower is 1,000. Bent finger, each one is 10,000. The tadpole is representing 100,000. And if you think about Egypt and the flooding of the Nile, there's probably certain times of the year where there were, you probably thought 100,000 tadpoles running around. Lots of tadpoles. And then the one on the far left is the god Heth, H-E-H, who is the god of chaos or infinity, and he represents 1,000,000. So we have the number 1,333,330. And I so want that one to be, that stroke to be a 1, because then it'd be an anagram. But where if it were supposed to be a 1, it would have been above that part hieroglyph. For fractions, the fractions in ancient Egypt were almost exclusively what we call unit fractions. So the numerator was a 1, and then you had another number in the denominator. And so that's probably because they were using this symbol that looks like a mouth that means part of. So on the far left there, we've got the mouth saying it's a fraction, and there are 6 strokes under it, so that's representing 1/6. So you've got 1 part out of 6 from the whole. Then the one on the top right, it's being read from right to left. So we've got the mouth saying it's a fraction, the hobble for 10, and then 6 strokes, so it's 1/16. You know enough yet? Can you read the bottom one in the middle? Yeah, 1/120. And you can see why I wanted to go back to Egypt. These pictures are blurry. I wanted better pictures. All right, so I gave the lesson to my co-travelers so that we could be looking for these. They could help be my eyes as well on my hunt. So day 3, we started off in Cairo. We visited the Bible Society, and I've got some things that I picked up from there up on this front table. There's like a Where in the World is Waldo type book, but it's in Arabic. Some things they have kind of an area for children to go through, and they run school groups through here. Now in Egypt, it is illegal to proselytize to Muslims, and so they don't hand out free Bibles, but people can buy a Bible at a low cost. Okay, then we went to Memphis, which at one point was the capital of Egypt. Archaeologically, there's not a whole lot left there. There's a few statues. The second largest sphinx in Egypt, a big colossus of Ramses II, and some other stone pieces and stelae. So I took as many pictures as I could. I've yet to find I didn't notice any numbers while we were there, and looking at the pictures, I'm still on the hunt for those. But next was Saqqara. So the step pyramid is behind me in the picture, and here's a close-up here on the right. This was the first stone building, possibly in the world, definitely in Egypt. And where it comes from, the pyramids were tombs. And so very, very early on, people would bury the dead on the west side of the Nile because the sun set in the west, so that was associated with death. And they would just dig a hole and put the body in, and it would naturally mummify because it's so dry. And they wanted the body to be able to be resurrected, so you didn't want jackals coming in and digging the body up. You didn't want the wind blowing and the sand moving and shifting in the body. So the body would be exposed and they'd see it was mummified. So they started mummifying them themselves, and they dig a pit, put a stone tabletop like thing on top of it, held a mastaba to protect so that the body would stay under the ground. Well, King Zoser had an architect named Imhotep, and Imhotep built this nice tomb down in the ground for King Zoser and had a mastaba ready to go. Well, Zoser didn't die, so Imhotep expanded the mastaba, made it bigger. Zoser still kept living, and so he put another mastaba on top of that one, and then another one and another one, until he finally ended up with the step pyramid. So it has 6 layers on it. So nearby the step pyramid, this became a necropolis, so where people did a lot of burying. Few pharaohs after Zoser, we have Sneferu, and Sneferu tried to make a regular pyramid, not a step pyramid, but a regular pyramid, and it collapsed. So his second try is here, and it doesn't show up real well in the picture, but it's called the bent pyramid because they were building it at a 54-degree angle, and then realized it was not on bedrock for all 4 corners, and the inside burial chamber, which is actually inside the pyramid this time, started to crack. And so they quickly finished it off at 43-degree angle. So it looks like it has a bend, called the bent pyramid. Third try was the charm, and he got the one behind it was called the red pyramid. While we were at Saqqara, we visited some other tombs. This was one of the pharaohs' butcher, and it's incomplete. You can see here's a drawing that didn't actually get carved or painted, butchering a leopard over on the right, some life-size people to help in the afterlife there on the left. And then we visited the tomb of Neonkhnum and Khnumhotep. I'm still searching for hieroglyphic numbers. This one has a lot of painted hieroglyphs in it, a lot of everyday scenes. I get excited because, some really cool geometric shapes. So it looks like we've got a sphere maybe, and a cone. Turns out, now that I've been studying more, there's probably different types of bread that were being offered. I took this picture for Dr. Flood. It's a cow giving birth. And then I saw this one. I thought maybe lotus flowers for 1,000 on the left. Our guide didn't seem to think so. She thought they might be some other hieroglyphs. The one on the top is definitely a sedge plant, which is not 1,000. But I'm still not convinced that those are not 1,000. And then I didn't realize it until I was going through my pictures to do this talk. And you see something big enough? Yeah, I thought I hit the bullseye. There's a mouth with strokes under it. So the mouth is also an R. It's also used for two. So you can see mouths all over that are not going to be fractions, but that one, it looks like it is a fraction. You read hieroglyphs towards the faces. So this would be read from right to left. And it looks like there's two strokes, and then we have 1/6. So success. Found a new example in the wild. When I took this picture, I was kind of interested in those tables with the vertical lines, and noticed they didn't have the same number on each. So I was looking at this, thought that was kind of interesting, and this one, and they're not as interesting as I thought they might be. They're just, it's bread being offered. There's a type of bread that is long like that. But then as I looked at the picture some more, I noticed we have some lotus plants. And as I was reading more about offerings that they made, a lot of times it'd say 1,000 bread and beer. Well, here we have 1,000, and then that's a loaf of bread underneath it, and 1,000, and that is a jug of beer underneath that. So they use the same yeast type material when they made their bakeries were next to breweries, because they used a lot of the same ingredients. And workers were often paid in bread and beer, and sometimes onions. So then I look at this some more. There's two more lotus flowers. So we have 1,000 again. And this took me forever, ever to figure out what it was. So I've got lots of books and dictionary, hieroglyph dictionaries. Just couldn't really find that. And that is supposed to be an ox. And then a fowl. To me, it looks like a cobra. But it's raised food. So 1,000 oxen and 1,000 fowl birds. And then we've got more. Here's 1,000 with the bread underneath it. 1,000 with beer underneath it. Now, with this particular day, our guide had said, you're going to see numbers. She knew about, and it was in this same tune, that there are going to be numbers. And so everybody's so excited. It's in a little room. It's really dark. She's shining a light. And I'm short. And they all beat me. And they're all taking pictures. And there's iPhones everywhere. And I didn't get a good picture of this at all. So I had to steal both games. But it's not as exciting yet to me as I thought it will be. There's lots of ones and twos, maybe. The one stroke also means a determinative. Two also means plural. All the three strokes are two, but there are some four strokes over on the left. But there's lots of hieroglyphs on here that I haven't translated yet. So maybe a little more excitement, but some numbers maybe. Then near Saqqara and the Step Pyramid, there are lots of carpet schools. So we got to visit one. I got to put a piece on there and tie one of the knots. And if you want to feel on your way out a sample, they're very expensive. This was about most I could afford, but it has the Eye of Horus on it. My earrings are Eye of Horus earrings. There is a theory that the different pieces of this represent different powers of the fraction 1/2.
question.
Huh?
Why are they so much for just like a little? What is this? Because it's very good.
Because
That
it's made by hand, very
Oh.
small,
Okay.
and I think this one's silk.
Nice for tourists.
Yes, yeah, that's true too. Also on your way out, if you want to see some Egyptian money, I brought a 10-pound. This is enough to get you into the restroom.
Okay.
So it's not.
How do you get out? Another 10?
I don't know. She didn't have any trouble getting out. Good question. And that evening, we went to the Mina House, which I thought was going to be a place we had visited before, and there's now I think it's a Marriott hotel that's built over it. It's very fancy. The pyramids were in the background. I kept seeing an orange, looked like a lightsaber blade going up and down, and I thought maybe there was a light show. And it turns out when we left, it was a gate opening up to let cars through. They had orange along it. But we did have some bright entertainment. I guess my sound's going through. But while we're having our fancy meal. And leaving was so.
What did you eat there?
That one had things on braziers, and so there was different types of meat. There may have been some lamb, and then roasted vegetables.
And bread?
And bread. Yeah. Pita bread about everywhere we went. So very good. And leaving, it was very exciting. This is GEM, the Grand Egyptian Museum, that we were going to get to see soon. And people have been waiting for years for this. I think the first announcement was maybe in 2020. But we kept getting pushed back. They said it's going to open this time, and it got pushed back. So when I was planning on this trip, they talked about it was going to open 4th of July, have a grand opening. They had select tours and parts of it open, but not the whole thing. Well, that got pushed back. And it turns out the grand opening was either the day we arrived or the day before. And so there was still a lot of traffic in Cairo, but it was open. They claim it's the largest museum in the world now. But it's definitely the largest Egyptian collection, ancient Egyptian. So day 4, we went to the Coptic visit to visit some churches and a synagogue. So I wasn't expecting to find numbers so much, but I was still on the hunt for maybe some interesting geometry, and it didn't disappoint. So there are a bunch of different churches. This is an area where the Holy Family, when they had to flee Israel, when King Herod was killing all the 2-year-olds and younger males, where they fled. And we visited a church that's been built over the area where they think they lived, the little cave area. I think Emperor Hadrian built this one on the top right. But lots of symmetry patterns that come up in my abstract algebra class and the applied algebra class that I'm teaching right now. And then this particular floor tile reminded me of coloring Pascal's triangle that you've heard me talk about before. And there were bells. That got me excited. Got to see some bells. That afternoon, we visited the Old Cairo Museum, which was across the street from our hotel, so the Museum of Egyptian Antiquities. So I'm back on my hunt. I had done more research than on my first trip. I did most of my reading after the trip. And so I realized there was stuff I missed, and that's probably why I wanted to go back. So there are 2 things that early hieroglyphs I was hoping to see, and I hit a home run with one of them. Struck out on one, but the other one was a home run. One of the first things in there was the Narmer palette. So Narmer was the first king to unify Lower and Upper Egypt, and as to one country. So the Nile runs from south to north. So Upper Egypt is in the south, Lower Egypt is in the north. I always have to think twice about that. But the Narmer palette, they wore makeup and would mix like duck fat with ground up semi-precious stones and wear eye makeup, just like kind of football players, to help with the glare and reflection of the sun. But this had early hieroglyphs on it. Narmer is telling about smiting his enemies. That pose became a very big thing in Egyptian art for the next 3,000 years. And early hieroglyphs on here, and there's the enemies with their heads between their legs, separate heads between their legs. But what I was excited and wanted to see this again, I may have seen it the first trip and just didn't know what I was looking at. But these are papyrus plants, not lotus flowers, but they think this may have been an early hieroglyph for 1,000. So Narmer is represented as the horse, falcon, and there's a rope or something with the enemy's nose. So he defeated it and made 6,000 of the enemy. A treat I didn't know about, but our guide did, was this particular statue. So one of the earliest examples of royal statuary from the 2nd dynasty. And if you look down at the bottom, you can see the enemies defeated, carved out, and then there are 4 bent fingers here. So I didn't tell you there'd be a quiz. So the bent finger is 10,000. 8 lotus flowers. 2 coils of rope. And then it's really hard to see even in the photo, zoomed in, but there are 5 strokes here. So he's telling how many enemies he defeated. And it's common with numbers and hieroglyphs, they were an adjective. And so your noun would come first, and then you'd have how many. So you got enemies on the top, and then the number down below. So he defeated 48,205 of the enemy. Our guide almost cried when we got up on the 2nd floor. This is where King Tut exhibit used to be, and it's now moved to the Grand Egyptian Museum. And all the pieces are on display, I think, or most pieces are now on display, and they didn't have room before. So it's still bare, and I'm sure they will bring other things out of storage to fill it up eventually. Day 5 is kind of a rest from the hunt for numbers. We visited a Protestant church, which just happened to have a U.S. evangelist there. So we were wearing headsets and having someone translate the Arabic into English, but when it came sermon time, they were needing a translator, and we could understand. And the owner of High End Journeys invited us to eat at his house with his family. That was really, really nice to see how a person lives in the nice apartment area they were in. After church, we met with the minister and learned some about the church. So part of the mission, part of the trip. So day 6, Grand Egyptian Museum and the pyramids. So this was a big day. Here we are in line early on, going into the back entrance of the Grand Egyptian Museum. And it's just, you're just packed in there. But we finally made it in. And I got maybe this little video show. So this is in the opening foyer of the museum. Lots of people. And then the staircase going up to more of the galleries. So we went all the way up to the top to start with the Tut exhibit. So they had his chariots put together, the famous mask that was over his mummy, the different coffins and sarcophagi are on display. Here's a gold chest, which I think has a 9 right there. It's like 3 sets of 3 strokes. And lots of his sandals. And I guess his favorite royal pair of sandals. So about 5,400 items are found in King Tut's tomb. And he was a minor king, so imagine what must have been in some of the pharaohs that lived for a much longer time. But when they built the pyramids, those were like signposts. Hey, there's a tomb. There's a lot of gold buried under here. And so those are all gone, and the mummies are gone. But King Tut, Howard Carter was involved. So they found it in the 20th century. And I got excited. There were boomerangs. I didn't know they used boomerangs in Egypt. But what really excited me was this display, and there were 6 cubits. And I'm going to show some other cubits that I've seen in museums. These are the first ones I've seen that were just simple. So a cubit is the distance from your elbow up to your middle finger. A royal cubit is a bit longer than a regular person because the pharaoh is the equivalent of a god. And so it's about 20.6 inches, and I got out the handy dandy measuring thing on my phone, and sure enough, these were 20.6 inches long. Notice they're kind of marked off in little pieces. So another measure is a finger, and if you take 4 fingers, that makes a palm. And if you have 7 palms, that makes a cubit. So 28 fingers in a cubit. We did not visit Imhotep's museum in Saqqara, but our guide was nice enough to send me this video.
Cynthia,
Uh-huh.
if they have a measurement for this, from here to here.
Span, or I don't know that they did. I haven't read that they did.
We have.
Yeah, you told me about that. Yeah. Most early on, a lot of cultures used body parts because they were handy, but then they realized you needed to have standard measures, and the cubit became the standard measure in Egypt. But I haven't read them using that one. Just the
It's about 9 inches.
okay, and finger and the palm and the cubit, and then they have a measure for 100 cubits as well. I wanted to show you on this video. If I can pause it. In the fingers here, they have fractions marked off. And there was a special symbol for a half. And then there was the mouth and 3 strokes for a third and so on. And it'd go up to 1/28 of a cubit. I'll show you another picture in a minute. So there are 2 of these in Saqqara, and I saw them on my first trip, but we were not allowed to take pictures in that museum. So I was real excited and thankful that she sent me these pictures. When I was in Turin, and their Egyptian museum has 3 cubits. The top one's plated in gold, so probably ceremonial, and then there's one that's full. You can put it in your pocket. This one is in the Louvre, and it actually has the fingers then marked into fractions. So you've got half the side of a platform for a half, and that finger is marked into 2 pieces of the halves. Then a third marked into thirds, and so on. And then when we visited the pyramids, they had a square and some plumb bobs and a cupid that were there as well. So on my to-do list is trying to translate some of these cupids, some of the hieroglyphs on them. Okay, back to the Grand Egyptian Museum. I mean, it's a spectacular. We were only there a few hours. We could spend days and days like visiting the Louvre. Lots of different galleries. You've got a view of the pyramids there. You may have seen pictures of this big statue of Ramses that's at the front entrance of it. In the middle on the top is the solar boat for Pharaoh Khufu for the biggest pyramid. And when I saw it last trip, it was there at the pyramid. They had a special museum. Put up these moccasin type booties and walked on the floor so you didn't bring in sand from out by the pyramids. So now I get to see it in its new home. So going through pictures that I took, just because there was so much to see, this stela has some numbers on it. All right, and then we ate lunch and saw pyramids and rode a camel. Those that wanted to. The rest of our group is in this little buggy. And so our guide made arrangements so we didn't just do a camel ride out and back and then have to get back on a shuttle to drive to the pyramids. She let us have the entire ride all the way to the pyramids, which was a long camel ride. And by the time it was over, I started to feel like I could get the sway down. And so then we walked around the pyramids and saw the Sphinx. The sun was not in a good place for taking pictures. I should have taken a picture. Across the street now from the pyramid is the Pizza Hut. Okay, day 7, we flew to Luxor, which has also been a capital of Egypt. And there we visited Karnak Temple. And I knew I had seen some numbers here before on the first trip. The size is just amazing. You see how big these different columns are in the hypostyle hallway. Makes you feel very small. Lots of colors still around. Stars on the ceiling, ceilings. We even saw stars back in Saqqara and some of the tombs there. So almost every piece of space is carved with hieroglyphs. And as I looked through my pictures on this one more closely, I started seeing there's numbers. So I don't know from where you're sitting if you can read that or not. There's 2 hobbles and 4 strokes. Here we have 40, 135. And look, this thing is so cool. So 95. These are being read from right to left. The higher power of 10 goes first. This is in another building. I just thought it was amazing how the color just lasted over the millennia. And this little temple was also used as a church. And so there are some plaster reliefs of some saints on some of the columns. And this was an area where the group leader Maria had noticed numbers on a previous trip. So I got very excited. Can you tell which direction we're reading?
This time,
This was left to right, yeah. More numbers, just all over the place. So
Cynthia, how old is that blue color?
that blue color, least 2,500 years, maybe
Because
3,000.
Europeans didn't know blue color for a long time anyway.
Yeah. It's expensive, I think, to get blue. So this to me seemed like, it's a grid, and I thought, is there a pattern for how these numbers are showing up? So put them in Excel, and notice, the numbers are quite a bit bigger in the last row. And I didn't really see any pattern showing up. I thought, well, what if I add the columns? And then what if we add across that row? So it's almost a match. We've got a problem here. So I looked at the picture, and there's a crack. And so very well could be a stroke missing. And I don't know which cell. I mean, it could have been in the top one there. Probably not the next one, would have been over too much, but it might have been where the 10 was. So evidently there's a 1 missing there. But I just thought it was so cool. Spreadsheets have been around for millennia. They are not a new modern.
That's Lotus 1, 2, 3.
You think so?
That's actually
It's not been around that long.
pretty. Lotus
You
negative.
have a Lotus there.
Yeah. Lotus negative. Oh, there are lotus flowers, yeah. I see your pun. So now, as I was doing this talk, my hunt changed a little, or added to it. I not only wanted to find examples of hieroglyph numerals to show students, I want to know, why were they using those numbers? How are they using those numbers? So I wanted this ancient spreadsheet translated. Did it have headers across the top? Well, I'm pretty sure this is the title of that spreadsheet. And that I haven't translated yet. I've put this in, gone a couple of groups on Facebook about translating hieroglyphs. They have been helpful, but not, I wanted the exact, what's this saying? Haven't quite got that, but that determined it. So this is read toward the faces, so it's left to right. On the end, you've got, looks like maybe a pharaoh with a false beard and a flail. So something about royalty. So this is something that needs more work, but something symbolizing a god or pharaoh. The mouth here is probably saying to, so these are probably offerings to some ancestors, some divine ancestors that came before. So looking at what look like the column headers on the spreadsheet, those 3 are almost exactly the same, except this one has 1 stroke, the middle one has 2 strokes, and the last one has 3 strokes. So I thought, well, maybe this is something about the different seasons, but that didn't seem to quite work. These 2 on the far left are exactly the same, except for the strokes are different. This one has 2 strokes, this one has 3, and then the middle one is a little bit different. So asking the hive mind came up that part of this has to do with bread. So these hieroglyphs are a type of bread. Then the middle part is a brazier, so that means fire or burning.
Oven.
Means what?
Oven.
Oh, oven? I don't know.
Looks like an oven.
Yeah, but you got this thing hanging down at the bottom. So I think it's either warm bread or a burnt offering of bread. One person suggested that the strokes were related to the type of bread, certain bread, the flour was maybe sifted more often to be finer. But as I looked and looked and looked, so I'm looking at this one, I'm trying to find this hieroglyph in the different dictionaries I have. Found a crook, but that's not really quite a crook. There's a stand below it. Then I happened to look, not at that one, but at this one. And see, it looks like there's 3 light little dots coming out of it, which reminded me of the hieroglyph for Hecate, which is a grain measure. And those two have been combined, and there is this hieroglyph on the bottom that represents a Hecate, which is a measure of grain. Think about it.
I have seen something like that, Cynthia. The laborers in the harbor, when they carry sacks of flour, they have a hook like that and they have a metal or wooden thing to hold it.
Oh.
And with a shoulder and walk.
And walk with it.
Yeah,
Oh,
very similar to that.
that could be where that came from. Yeah. This
They
one's-
still use a similar hook in New Orleans to unload sacks of
Yeah.
coffee beans.
Okay. And I know for like bales of hay, there's, you hit it with a hook. It's not quite the same, it doesn't have the stroke in the middle of the bottom base, but it's close enough, that's gotta be it. Okay, so looking at the other row headers, or column headers, sorry. This one was in the middle. That is definitely bread. And the loaf, we saw that before under the lowest flour, that's a determinant for bread. So this is a different type of bread. And again, something with fire, or burning, or warm. And then 5 hectares of that. Haven't quite figured these out, and my Facebook new buddies don't know either, because there is the half thing is the loaf, which could be a determinant for bread, or it could be the letter T. And the pintail duck is used as saw for son, and you put it with a T. T is the feminine ending, so that would mean daughter, but
It's all a flying saucer coming into the duck feed.
is that what you see? Yeah. Well, I don't want to translate as burn your child. 3 hectares of. So this one's still,
Could it be indication of which family member burned it?
that's an idea. Yeah, that's a possibility. In their honor maybe, or they do it,
Or it was either for them,
or by them. Yeah, that's an idea. I like that better than,
burning a child.
yes, yes. So looking at the whole thing, there's a bunch of blank cells on the top, which maybe they were left for putting in more information, and some on the side here. There's the title, which I haven't quite got figured out, but offering to someone in the past. And way over here on the right is the hieroglyph for, has kind of related to some, but it's not exactly the right thing. And then we've got, those headers there. And so I needed to be looking at over here on the left.
So maybe you said, how big are each of the individual cells? It's-
Foot by foot.
Yeah, they're not quite square, but yeah. So looking on the left, trying to figure it out, I did notice the cartouche that means a pharaoh, and with Andrew's help, my son, his good eyes, figured out, because there's damage there, but it's this particular cartouche. The B and the sedge plant mean it's the throne name of the pharaoh, and that is Thutmose III. And looking at the row headers, every single one has the hieroglyph for festival. And then that hieroglyph showed up over farther on the left. And there were other hieroglyphs that mean festival. Then it looks like we have a 10 that's got the top chopped off, a 10 and something else. Something I can't read yet, a 1 and a 14. So maybe talking about what day of the festival. Over in the purple, that is for the season harvest, which we would call summer. I lost it.
What calendar were they using at this time?
So they had 3 seasons. One was inundation when the Nile flooded. Then it would recede and they would plant and things would grow and then they would harvest. And they also broke the year up into 12 months of 30 days each, which is going to come out 5 1/4 short, or roughly that. So they added 5 festival days in, which I think maybe these are talking about. And then they didn't have a leap year, so eventually the civic calendar got off from what seasons were happening. But we get our 12 months of the year from the ancient Egyptians. And what else did I want to say about the calendar? They did not have a running calendar. The years were by the pharaoh. So when Thutmose III became pharaoh, there'd be year 1 of Thutmose III, year 2 of, year 3 of. And then when you get a new pharaoh, it started over again. And whoever was like 2 or 3 pharaohs after King Tut forgot about, he erased King Tut, and that's why they didn't know about him for a while. And so he started his counting back when, I think it was Tut's father, Akhenaten, they started it way back there and took over their years on the calendar. So we can't, it's harder to put it with ours. I'm
There's
sorry.
an Egyptian story about why there's an extra 5 1/4 days on the end of the year.
Pardon?
There's a story about why there's 5 1/4 days tacked on at the end of the year.
I don't think they did the quarter. Did the story have the quarter? I've
They
heard
had
about
s-
5.
They had at least 5 days.
They did have
I don't
5
know.
days, yeah.
But
Yeah, they had 5 festival days. The Maya did something similar, but their days were bad days. But I don't think the Egyptians knew about the quarter part. They got their calendar got off. And then here, so this is talking about day 4, and the purple is first. So, and it's month. So the first month of the season of harvest, day 4. And then those continue. And then we have at the very bottom, this means sum, and that's in the row where they summed up everything.
Something like McDonald's sign, like
McDonald's sign.
like a M. Maybe it's like the, yeah, what is that?
Yeah, that's the sum, total. That's two flails being held. Okay, and then, I'm sorry, I've got so much here I'd love to talk about. Seshot, Sesh means scribe. Seshot was a goddess of writing, accounting, record keeping, synthesis, and mathematics. And here's how you write her name in hieroglyphs. We've got the T, the half loaf of bread, for the T part of her name, it's Sesh. And then that to me determinant kind of looks like a fraction or a piece of grain. And near her we saw the Godhead for 1,000,003 tadpoles. And then we visited Luxor at night, saw the hieroglyph for Seshot there. This is a mosque that was built on top of the temple. The temple was covered with sand. Christians used this for a church, and maybe this, I think maybe this was some Romans painted over the hieroglyphs. Looks like we've got numbers there. A girl was drawing with using her film for light. Day 8, we visited Dendera, which had also been pretty much covered up with sand. Fraction. Amazing ceilings. They had a zodiac, so they're on the ceilings. Melted stairs are at Dendera.
Worn out.
Or I think it's worn out. Lots of different theories about it. And Dendera is known for the zodiac. So this is the first instance of the zodiac being a circular thing. The left is an artist rendition. There are, I think, some solar eclipses, or at least one marked on there, and a couple lunar ones. Napoleon's savants cut that out of the ceiling of one of the rooms in the Dendera temple upstairs. And so now it's in the Louvre, that's in the upper right-hand corner. And they gave a replica, and that's in the bottom. And our guide was very angry. Because you look at this, what the replica looks like. That's what
I missed it, but what do you call this kind of depiction?
it's a zodiac. Zodiac.
Zodiac.
And it has 72 constellations, including 48 that the Greek astronomer Ptolemy mentions in his book, The Almagest. And found this going through pictures. We've got fractions. And so this is the number 5 6/15, which I should have simplified it. And another,
They do the fraction 1/1/1/1, right?
yep, and you can't repeat. So 3/5 is not a fifth, what's a fifth? And then we ended up in the Valley of the Kings, went through a couple of tombs. One was Ramses IV, has a lot of graffiti that was used as a hotel for archaeologists, a lot of Greek visitors that have been marked on the walls. And this room has a huge stone sarcophagus, and it goes all back. But I was interested, the colors are just fabulous, but the goddess Nut is sometimes on ceilings, and so at nighttime when the sun sets, she swallows the sun and it goes through her body, and she gives birth to the sun in the morning. So you can see that on the ceiling. There's a shadow of the sarcophagus there. She's actually up there twice on that ceiling, and going through my pictures, I got to learn some more about hieroglyphs with numbers. So there is the hieroglyphs for season of growth. Day 23, season of harvest. Day 6, and I struggled and struggled with the things on the left, and it turns out that's like a little piece of the moon, and so it's month. So month 1 of the season of growth is 2023, and the bottom one would be month 3. And there were star charts also on the ceiling, lots of numbers showing up there. And then the tomb of Ramses IX had a lot of interesting hieroglyphs. I haven't found numbers there yet. And then of course we had to go into King Tut's tomb. And he is still in there. If you go down the stairs, right to the left, there's his mummy. And it was found in those, I think there are 4 different gold coffins in this room. It's about 14 by 14. And she ended up being Pharaoh
How
Hatshepsut.
much are those entrance tickets in US dollars?
I have no idea because they bought it for us.
$50.
Probably something like that. Yeah, Hatshepsut was a female, but she was a pharaoh and had a really interesting temple. And near there are these factories where they try to sell you alabaster souvenirs. Bobby got a scarab. And then we ended up with the Colossi of Memnon, which had a bunch of different pylons. And we have these 2 colossi are still there. So far I haven't found any numbers. And I didn't realize until I was putting this top together, there's another one with a part of them back there. So my hunt for numbers ended up, and their uses, counting, like the number of enemies, the offerings. The number is an adjective that follows a noun. Numbers were used for measurement, so linear measurements, volumes, etc., and for calendars. So thanks for letting me talk about my trip and some of the things that I learned.
So you mentioned Ptolemy.
Uh-huh.
Ptolemy's map of the world.
Yeah.
Sri Lanka is half the Indian Ocean.
Really? Oh, that's
It
cool.
has shrunk.
Thank you guys for coming. Sorry I went over. Get so excited about this stuff.